Another opportunity to do 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations. That's what we do here on Business Morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ini John Mekwa. This is Business. Starting from the global space, oil prices dropped on Thursday as the latest tariff announcements by the U.S. President Donald Trump were perceived by market participants to threaten global economic growth and demand for the resource. And Brent, we see for this morning, is down in the red, 0.31%. It dropped from $70 we had yesterday to $69 this morning. And then WTI also down 0.39%. That's about 27 cents. It's down to $68.11 a barrel. On Wednesday, Trump threatened Brazil, Latin America's largest economy, with a punitive 50% tariff on exports to the U.S. after a public spat with his Brazilian counterpart, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Earlier, Trump announced plans about tariffs on copper, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals, and his administration sent tariff letters to Philippines, Iraq, and others, adding to over a dozen of letters issued earlier in the week, including for the powerhouse U.S. suppliers, South Korea, and Japan. As policymakers remain worried about the inflationary pressures from Trump's tariff, only a couple of officials at the Federal Reserve's June 17 to 18 meeting said they felt interest rates could be reduced as soon as this month. The minutes were released yesterday. Higher interest rates make borrowings more expensive and reduce demand for oil, providing some support to prices. U.S. crude stocks rose while gasoline and distillate inventories fell last week, according to the Energy Information Administration. Gasoline demand rose 6% to 9.2 million barrels per day last week, according to the same source. And still staying in the oil and gas, Nigeria's oil rigs count have risen from 31 as of January this year to 46. That's according to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the NUPRC. The chief executive of the NUPRC, Gbenga Komolafe, who made this known in Abuja, says that the increase in rig count shows that Nigeria is making huge progress in harnessing its hydrocarbon resources in line with the Commission's effort to increase the country's crude oil production by 1 million barrels per day before the end of next year through the Project 1 Million Barrels initiative. He explains that about 300,000 barrels per day of crude oil has been achieved since the launch of the program in October last year. And Nigeria's foreign exchange reserve is expected to rise to $41 billion by the end of this year. This would be marginally higher than what it was recorded in 2024. According to the media outlook by multi-asset investment management firm Cardinal Stone, the rise in the country's external buffer is attributed to plans by the federal government to raise a combined sum of $3.2 billion in the second half of the year to meet some of its fiscal priorities. The company adds that expected inflows from portfolio investors would also support this projection, with the Naira sustaining the current gains. Now, Africa's economic future takes center stage this morning at Africa Unlocked 2025. This is the second annual Business and Economic Forum hosted by Standard Bank, parent company of Stanbic Bank Ghana, and that begins in Cape Town. Running from today, the high-profile event brings together a powerful lineup of business leaders, policymakers, and innovators to drive actionable strategies under the theme Business Shaping Africa's Tomorrow. Laddie Williams is there and sent in a bit of what to expect.
I'm right here at the Norval Foundation, Cape Town, South Africa, for the Africa Unlocked. That's Unlocking Africa's Growth Conference, business and commercial banking conference organized by Standard Bank. Its primary aim is to explore the African continent's growth potential and highlights the crucial role that commercial banking plays in its development. The event brings together a diverse group of stakeholders, including high-ranking government officials, distinguished partners, renowned thought leaders, senior executives from various African markets. Our key themes today and discussions at the conference revolve around unlocking Africa's growth, with a specific focus on topics such as the growth of multi-generational family businesses and their contribution to building future stock market leaders. The importance of stimulating small and medium-sized enterprises, growth to unlock Africa's overall potential. Also, boosting intra-African trade, the role of specialized finance solutions in business growth, the significance of strong banking relationships. That's for SMEs at this time. So we're expecting so much. And key here is how to unlock Africa's potential, at this time with what we're seeing going on in the global space. Laddie Williams reporting for Channels Television News.
Yeah, that's where Laddie is. So we expect a whole lot, as much as he has listed. We expect him to give us the details in the next few days, and hopefully that should run up until Monday. Now let's come back home, where the International Monetary Fund, as the IMF, has pledged support for the Federal Inland Revenue Service, now the Federal Revenue Service now, concerning the ongoing reforms, while commending the agency for what it describes as significant progress in its core duties. This pledge was given by senior economist at the Fiscal Affairs Department of the body, Paulo Paz, at the opening of the IMF-supported headquarters mission at the Revenue House in Abuja. The mission of the IMF team to Nigeria is to explore areas that the organization could further support the agency in addressing challenges that might arise, particularly with the recently signed tax laws. In a statement from the Special Advisor on Media to the FIRS Chairman, Dari Adekombi, Paz said that the IMF recognized the good work that FIRS has been doing to the citizens under the current administration. And we're staying with the IMF this morning. We know the IMF has been really busy after the Article 4 that was released, after the visit that they did, the staff level visit that was done. So one of the concerns that the IMF has raised concerning Nigeria is the lack of robust social safety net to protect poor Nigerians. Seems we cannot have enough of this conversation. So while I had this conversation last week with the former director of Give Nigeria, I believe, it seemed there's a need to also touch on this again after that article, and I'm sure you've heard the conversations that have been going on around that. The fund said that although Nigeria has made progress with recent reforms, poverty and food insecurity remain widespread, and there's absence of proper social buffer that poses a risk to inclusive growth. We have the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of BIC Consultancy Services, Dr. Boniface Chizia. Dr. Chizia, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ini, for having me.
Yeah, so I guess this is just reiteration by the IMF, because even at the beginning of the reforms, the removal of subsidy, the merging of the currency FX rate, they had warned and said that there should be social safety programs even before those reforms came on board. So I guess this is just IMF reminding Nigerian governments that you still need those safety nets if the impact of your reforms would be appreciated.
Well, I think that safety nets, we're just looking at it. I think if you look at it, what's important for us as a country is that we have to be a bit pro-poor. This is what's going to be very important. If you look at, talking of transfers, to the poor and the vulnerable, now that's going to be massive. If you, what's the population of Nigeria that has been designated as poor? You have it's about 42%. And you have a population of about 200 million people and counting. Now, so where are you going to get the money from to do these transfers? And even when you make the transfers, to that extent, it's like giving somebody a fish. We should try and teach people how to fish. That is more sustainable. So my concern is that, yes, these things, it's very easy to just read them off glibly, but then when it comes to implementation, you see, we are strapped. They've also told us that we have difficulties with challenge in terms of our revenue flows. So where are you going to get the money to begin to do those transfers? And besides the fact that we don't even seem to have the system in place, to even effect the transfer. Our population, what's our population, and so on and so forth. Now, the poor who are deserving of this, where are they in this country? And when they're going to implement them, you find that all sorts of considerations will be taken on board. And then again, cleavages and so on, and they find that it's been done in some parts of the country more than in some other parts of the country. So there are lots of issues about transfers. And then we tried it in the past. We tried it under the past administration. And there were lots of issues about transparency. So it's a difficult area to go. I think that what Nigeria needed to do, we have a sizable proportion of poor people in this country, is to adopt a pro-poor budgeting. And I mean, they talked about budget implementation as part of their recommendation. I didn't hear that. They talked about the system we have to put in place, assumptions and the expenditure, transparency, and then the budget implementation. Talked about that, but they didn't talk about really the content of the budget. So if you're doing your budget and you want to address the poor, then you better target, like those who are vulnerable. You target education, target health, target housing. That's more sustainable. So, but I think so the challenge. So, I mean, government is going to transfers and so on. Besides the shared difficulties, we don't know where those people are. We try to do that on the immediate past regime, and there are also complaints. The money were being diverted, the money to market women and so on and so forth. But my challenge is that we are challenged for revenues, and they themselves have said so, that we should try and find a way to improve our revenue flows, which is quite a deal. I would expect that the tax reforms, when they're fully agreed and are being implemented, that they might help us in that direction. Because really, taxation should fund your recurrent expenditure. It has been the case in this country. Our tax to GDP ratio, has not been competitive. So if you look at our tax to GDP ratio and you look at neighboring countries, at some point in time, the ratio was about 7-8%. We'll have to try and up that substantially. So we'd expect that would happen. So that's my initial take on this. I think that we will emphasize that, and we made these recommendations, and would not, as far as I'm concerned, we would not thought these recommendations through properly, because we are challenged. So we are at 42% of 200 million people. How much are you going to transfer?
All right, Dr. Chizia.
A penchant for diversion. So okay.
All right, Dr. Chizia, I think what I hear you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that if the safety nets or the safety net programs that Nigeria should be facing should be inculcated into the budget. So, yes. So you have things like the health spending, education, and housing, and you do not think that perhaps there's a need for the humanitarian ministry because of the experience we've had in handling the humanitarian issues before now? Is that what you're saying?
No, my concern is about the emphasis. I think we're trying to overemphasize it, So they made it, like a key aspect of their recommendations. I know they talked about budgets, they talked about growth, and they talked about monetary policy. But then there seems to this has grabbed the headlines. That's my concern. So you can do that. But what I'm saying is that it's really not an effective, given our penchant, for not having a good record of implementing policies. I can't see it being as effective as it's been made to look. If you go by their recommendation, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. I'm not saying that you can do transfers, but we have issues. Do we have a register? But expect that with this administration, and we are embracing digitalization, information, and so on and so forth. Maybe we're going to get there. But I think that we're really challenged. I don't want to see us emphasizing it as it's being done. So I prefer that we'll talk about other more important things. Let's talk about growth. Let's make our growth inclusive. So growth, in fact, we've not had growth since 2013 to just before this time. So they put our growth at about 3.4. Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is about 2.9. Let's have growth that is based on real sector, not growth that is based on services. When the growth is based on real sector, you are talking of manufacturing, you're talking of industries, you're talking of construction and so on and so forth. We have employment. Employment will come on. So do that with the things. When people are employed, give them job. That's what I alluded to by saying that we don't want to give people a fish. We want to teach them, how to fish. So I think that's exactly what I'm saying. That there are so many ways, trying to skin a cat. And I think that to now begin to just look for money to begin to transfer, that's going to be quite substantial. And we don't call themselves spot on. They're saying that we are challenging revenue flows and so on and so forth. So that's just the point I'm trying to make. So I am not going to say that we shouldn't think of the poor and think of transfers and so on and so forth. But I shouldn't grab the headlines.
So how would you advise, for instance, that this is being handled? I mean, even our register, that has its own story on its own. I don't think there's a register now that everybody can clearly, state that this has all the number of the poor and all of that. So that's on the one hand, because we need data in whatever we're going to do. Today's world is driven by data. That's it. Now, but you say you don't really support the transfer. So what should the safety net program look like from your perspective? What are the low-hanging fruit? Apart from increasing spending on health and education and housing, what are those low-hanging fruit that you think can be adopted to meet this recommendation of IMF?
Well, I think that beginning of low-hanging fruits, they should try and improve environment. If I ask me, and let's improve infrastructure. let's have power supply. Sometimes we adopt a wrong focus. When we try to think of solutions, to our problems. Do you know what magic it will do to have a steady power supply in this country? What magic? Even to the low, the poor, and the downtrodden, the cost of generating alternative power supply in this environment it's unbelievable, and we don't seem to appreciate the full implications of that. And so, why can't we have steady power supply? Recently, we have tariff structures and so on and so forth, and bills are being increased, and in some areas, an area is supposed to be getting about 24 hours supply a day. I go about 2 days without any power in my environment. I know what I spend in part of solar and so on, generator, and so I know how much I spend, in trying to keep the base, keep power going in my place. So I think there's so many things we can do that if we did them, they also emphasize the issue of infrastructure. I think that power is something that we have to take seriously on board. The rate of grid collapse environment is totally unacceptable. It collapses and everywhere is thrown into utter darkness. I think that's one issue we've done about that. So the whole thing is about challenge. You can't even go to corruption. You go to corruption is massive in this environment. So nothing happens with that. You want to renovate a conference center, you spend $39 billion. You want to put in CCTV in the State House and you spend $24 billion. Hey, what's happening here? I think that we need to and this is why we're looking for people who have clean credentials, clean records, people who have not been stealing money in the past, to come on board. So it's important. Those are just issues. But so my overall take in this is that yes, you can try and do a few things, but we need to be careful about doing that because, like we did observe here, we don't even have a register that we can speak to its integrity. So we don't have it. So we had house of complaints in the last regime when they tried to produce some money to get in and so on and so forth. I don't know how much you got out of that. If you ask me, all that was driven by the need able to, gain some political capital. Not really meant to alleviate poverty. So I think that really, as one of the things we can do. Insecurity in this land is something else. So why can't we do something about it? Why can't we tackle it? So there are a lot of gaps. So I look at all those things. Look, UNESCO tells us what percentage of our budget we should put in education. Tell you what you put in health. We're not being able to do that. So I think that when you look at it, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I think that the challenges are enormous. So but I think that we stand high in trying to talk about transfers. And then those who are not well grounded, they just think that once you begin to transfer monies, let them down ask themselves, where are we going to budget from? You have it in the budget. You have the expenditures all over the place that are not even being budgeted for. And they talk about a budget system. So also budget in this country, we are talking about capital expenditure. 2014, we're still trying to implement. 2024. Is it not break up to the expenditure to the end of 2025? Because we have a budget system that is a rolling plan. We had it here in this country before, 3-year rolling plan. Why are we not implementing it? And because you know that capital budgets would invariably would take more than 1 year to implement. But we're not doing anything the way we should do it because we don't pick people in charge who have representative expertise to have things done. So I think that we should begin to really, as we are beginning to talk about 2027, make sure that we begin to get things right. Otherwise, we'll continue to languish at the bottom of the development ladder.
All right, Dr. Boniface Chizia, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of BIC Consultancy Services. Thank you so much for your views and your time this morning.
Thank you, Yini, for having me. Thank you.
All right, now let's take a break. And when we come back, we head to the commodity space. And we have a lot to talk about on the commodity space. I think top on the list will be the Dangote price slash, a second one in a week. But before then, there was an interesting sitting at the Senate yesterday where they mandated a joint committee to investigate the alarming rise of Ponzi schemes across the country following the collapse of crypto bullion exchange, which has reportedly defrauded investors of over 1.3 trillion naira. The decision followed a motion by Senator Adetokunbo Abiru from Lagos East, who expressed deep concern over the unchecked spread of fraudulent investment schemes, alleging that millions of Nigerians were lured with promises of high returns on digital assets. Gloria Mizuke, our National Assembly correspondent, was there yesterday and filed in this report.
They say aye. On the second legislative day for the week, lawmakers resumed to debate on the alarming rise and widespread financial fraud of Ponzi schemes and cybercrimes. The motion, sponsored by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Senator Adetokunbo Abiru, chronicles various schemes including the infamous MMM Nigeria in 2016, the NBA Forex in 2020, and most recently, CBEX. The argument is that fraudsters have used the scheme to massively defraud Nigerians.
I'm shocked that despite the scale of operations and visibility of CBEX, it operated for an extended period without facing sanctions. We need to find out from the Central Bank of Nigeria. We need to. Aside punishing or going after Ponzi, which is one out of the numerous, you can testify that this is not the first or second or third time. And we can't continue in this trend.
Lawmakers warned that the collapse of such schemes has driven victims to tragic outcomes, a narrative they agree calls for thorough investigation. The Senate refers this prayer as amended to the Joint Committees on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Capital Markets, Anti-Corruption and Financial Crimes, ICT and Cybersecurity to undertake extensive investigation, extensive education of the Nigerian public and revert to this August Assembly in 4 weeks.
Lawmakers also debate on the rescue of the nation's ailing power sector from imminent collapse through the Electricity Act Amendment Bill 2025.
Unfortunately, in our laws, there are very, very minimal penalties for such great vandalism so that national resources are lost.
Mr. President, it's high time we penalize the vandals. Steep penalties should be imposed on these bandits. If possible, we should give them capital punishment.
The amendment subsequently scales second reading. The Senate President used the opportunity to clarify public perceptions surrounding lawmakers.
But some people think that we come here to make money. They don't know that we come here to sacrifice for the growth of the nation so we can leave a better country for future generations.
The Senate also harped on the achievements of the Nigerian Customs Service in a motion presented by Senator Issa Jibrin as the Customs Chief assumes the role of chairperson of the World Customs Organization. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
All right, now let's go to the commodity space now with Halima Dedinro. Halima, good to have you a second time this week. Good morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, so I don't know if by now the cuts in Dangote's ex-depot price has trickled down to the pump.
Okay, I can't really say for now. We've not checked through the prices at the different filling station. But what I can say is that, we said earlier this week that as the global price shifts, there will be review as regards the domestic market. But what we are seeing presently is a reverse. The global price is about $70 per barrel right now.
Yeah, no, it came down to 69 this morning. Yesterday 69. It was at 70.
It was at 70.
This morning it came down to 69.
And it is up to 70 again. I just checked. I can't tell.
Just before you came in?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that means for price setting, Dangote is trying to look at the expectation in terms of the need of the domestic market, and also the price in terms of the global market. And let's not forget that the Brent that is being processed today is it has like a 90 days features. Is gotten like 90 days back.
Yeah, and the contract, is it 90 days or 2 months?
It's always 90 days too.
Okay.
So, and also the Naira to Brent is also there, which is
the crude for
Naira, which is also a good one that it will cost what is called the import cost, so to say, because Dangote is getting some part of his crude.
Yeah, and then I saw news that he's expecting that by the end of this year he will get 100% of the crude that he needs from Nigeria.
That's what the expectation is. So bringing this together, we'll see that the refinery is also trying to launch the CNG trucks, which means lesser demand for diesel, and it will also cut down the price in the coming months. So all this put together is trying to tell us that scale of production is filtering into the price of the commodity, and also value addition is also a good one for the economy. And being the fact that is a big producer compared to others, is trying to set the price and have a larger market share. So it's a win-win for Nigeria, for price movements and price pressure, and also supply in all. Yeah.
So, but we're still waiting for it to trickle down to the pump and all of that. Yeah. Then tomorrow is supposed to be D-Day, according to the reports, where we get our rebased GDP. I think FDC has gotten a little bit of news about what it could look like.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
But when we look at rebasing, as we rightly said the other time, earlier this week, we'll see that it's good because we said it will capture more activities.
Yeah.
And also because countries like Ghana, South Africa, their GDP is being measured in dollar terms. So when it comes to comparison, it will help in terms of how is this country performing in relative to those countries in the same region and even outside the region. It's a good one. But beyond that, we would see that in 2014, that it was rebased, our GDP is about $500 billion. So, and it came down to $300 billion, meaning we did bad. We didn't do well compared to 2014. Now we are saying it's likely to go back to $500 billion. So if we look at it net, it's not really a good one because the population has increased. So per capita income compared to what it was in 2014 and now has dropped in real terms. And so we will need to work more on inclusive growth to really help the masses feel the impact, because in terms of poverty, we are below the poverty line, and in terms of unemployment, we are still battling with that. So we still need more work in terms of that, so that at least not just in figure terms, in reality and in the effect of the disposable income, standard of living, the populace can really feel the impact.
Do we know what new sectors, could be captured?
Okay,
in this rebate?
Especially for the service sector, there are so many sectors that would be captured in that area. So there are fintech and all, so many subsets that is likely to be captured and is doing. And if we look at the what is it called, the federal accounts, we see that the non-oil sector is really doing well. It captures about 60% or so of the revenue. So meaning our what is it called now? Our reliance or our risk to oil sector is declining gradually. So
is it really declining?
Reliance.
Okay,
when
the
it comes
reliance.
To, yeah, when it comes
but when
to
we look at the
revenue,
revenue and all, we're still.
Yes. So it's becoming all encompassing as against what we had before now. That is just oil. So.
All right, but Naira we see recovered at least in the informal market, the parallel market. But I mean, the good thing is it's still around under 1,006, yes, 1,005 yes. 1,005 1,000. So
it's still there's a stability. Let's put it that way. So the volatility has reduced. And why we are seeing that is because of different factors, the good and the bad. Why I said that is because the latest PMI, we see that it dropped.
The one from CBN increased. So it's the one from Stanbic.
Yeah. Yes. So meaning the drive or the increase in economic output declined, so to speak. Meaning the pressure in terms of importing and all would help has helped the Naira to appreciate. That is on one hand. Then the second thing is the new policy in terms of using Naira cards to do international transactions. Though there are restrictions, $500 for some banks, $1,000 per month for some banks.
I am sure
per month.
I'm not even sure. Have you met somebody who has done it? Because I find it hard to.
He's just coming in. So
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, are you sure it has already started?
I'm just saying.
Even though the banks have told us that it will start.
They said it will start this week. But I'm just saying it's looking forward, the outlook for the Naira, because it will reduce the pressure in terms of I want green back to do this. Though the limit is still 1,000. So I think with time they will improve on that. That is on one hand. And if we look at what is it called, the FPI, that's really been helping. It's increased in this last June. Though it's hot money, it's not sustainable, but it's one of the things helping. And that's why when he plummeted some months back, we'll see that the CBN quickly increased the treasury bill so that it will attract investors, because the uncertainty in the global market is making some people to move away from the US market to other emerging markets. So it depends on how we position ourselves to really harness that opportunity. But now I think the treasury bill rate has come down to 16%.
Yeah, I think it's
which is 16%. Signaling to.
But it's still better than the federal government saving bonds and all of that.
Very better. But it's a signal to foreign investors that, are you sure this MPC, CBN are not tilting towards dovish stance? We're having our meeting in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So it could affect what we are going to see maybe in July as well. So we just need to look at what is more sustainable. So that is.
Well, I guess they will just have to go from here to here and find
see
out
a balance.
But I mean, the biggest would be the FDIs, which unfortunately we saw dropped. The last data that we saw, it dropped. And if we can attract more from that end.
But generally and in aggregate, the investor sentiment as regards Nigeria and emerging markets has improved compared to before. So I think if we could do some more.
But we still saw a 19% drop in FDI. That was a huge
It's very huge. It's very huge. So if we could do some more, we could. We
want the president to travel more?
Not really. It's not really about traveling. Actually, it's really about the substance of what the traveling will bring about in terms of discussion, agreements reached, trade policies, and all. So I think we could go from there to see changes positively.
All right. Just that politics has taken over now. Everybody's talking about 2027, you know, and it doesn't seem like we're going to get a lot of attention.
That's a topic for another day.
But anyway, what's happening to domestic commodities?
Okay, we are still seeing it being mixed. Some are flat, while some are up. Like beans now, the price is up. And it's not surprising because for beans, the cultivation period is always between June to October every year. Though irrigation could help in doing it all round, but the typical cultivation time is between June and October, and that's why we are seeing that uptick. And coupled with the insecurity factor, because most of these things are coming from the northern part, Borno, Gombe, they are those that are really into the cultivation of beans. And so that's why we need to do more in terms of preservation, so that when we have bumper harvest, it could be stored, and it could lessen the impact when we have cultivation period. So it is mixed, and those are the prices for now. Beans, rice coming up, but others are flat. So that is the situation currently.
All right, Halima, thank you so much for all of this information. Halima Adedino is analyst with Financial Services Company. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll see what's happening in the global space with Will Yvonne. Please stay with us.
We live in it.
Welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. We head to the global space now to hear what President Donald Trump has done again.
Oh,
Will's favorite figure in the whole wide world.
Of course. I just love Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. You know, he always blows his trumpet. He can't stay without blowing his trumpet. And, you know, now he has taken a hit on Brazil. Oh, my goodness. Brazil is not taking it.
And I'm sure you've seen the news about our B1, B2 visa.
Oh, yes.
You know, but we have to let everyone know that Nigeria started that circle.
Of course.
So this is just,
a retaliation.
Yeah, which is a normal global policy. You started it, even though you reversed it. They also had to do theirs. So
yes.
Let's not.
But maybe they should wait now. That okay, now fine. It's 3 months now with the pricing also, you know, be tapered down to match the duration.
I doubt that. Did you taper your price when you did it to the U.S.?
Oh, well, I wasn't there
with the
government. But you see, President Donald Trump has confirmed that a 50% tariff on copper imports will take effect August the 1st, following a national security assessment. Trump, who made this known on Truth Social, called copper critical to defense and tech infrastructure, including missiles and data centers. Copper prices rose 2.62% after the announcement, building on Tuesday's 13% surge, the biggest one-day jump since 1989. Now, Brazil's President Lula says his country will retaliate after U.S. President Trump imposed a 50% tariff on Brazilian imports starting August the 1st. Trump cited trade imbalances and Brazil's prosecution of Jair Bolsonaro. Lula called the move political and said Brazil will respond under its new reciprocity law. The Brazilian real fell over 2% on the news. U.S. Trade Center shows that $7.4 billion surplus with Brazil in 2024, despite Trump's claims. Now, Trump hosts 5 African leaders, pushes trade to over 3% to the D.C. summit in Washington with leaders of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal, nations facing 10% U.S. tariffs. During a televised White House lunch, the African leaders praised Trump for his peace efforts in Africa and urged American investments in resources and tech projects. The summit centers on Trump's trade, not aid strategy as the U.S. shifts from traditional development support to commercial partnerships under its America First policy. The European Union remains in limbo as the deadline for a trade deal with the U.S. passes without an agreement. President Donald Trump had initially set July the 9th as the deadline to avoid the reciprocal tariffs, but talks continue. Trump said this week a deal or letter could be sent in 2 days, though none has been issued to the EU yet, unlike other countries that have received new tariff notices. Now we go to the UK now, where the UK government has dropped plans to introduce zonal energy pricing, which would have seen higher electricity costs in the south compared to Scotland. Energy Secretary E.D. Miliband said the country will maintain a single national wholesale price and reform the existing system to make electricity fairer and more secure. Advocates claim zonal pricing could cut grid costs, but critics warned it would create a postcode lottery for energy bills. Still staying in the UK, the FTSE 100 surged to a new record high of 8,947.84 points on Wednesday, up 0.9% as investors brushed off trade war concerns. Mining stocks led gains despite President Trump's fresh round of tariffs, including a 50% duty on copper imports and penalties on Brazil. Traders appear unfazed by the global recession risks. Now we check in with Bitcoin, which has soared to a record high of $112,000 late on Wednesday, fueled by renewed institutional interest and a surge in risk appetite. This marks a near 20% gain for Bitcoin so far this year, despite lingering macroeconomic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. Analysts attribute the rally to growing confidence among traditional financial institutions, which have deepened their exposure to digital assets in recent months. The rally comes amid broader strength across the crypto markets and increased speculation that U.S. regulators may further ease restrictions on crypto-related financial products in the second half of the year. Let's head to Asia now. The Bank of Korea held its rate at 2.5% on Thursday, citing rapidly rising sold home prices and household debts. Housing costs jumped 19% in June year-on-year, prompting new mortgage curbs. The Bank of Korea said financial stability remains a priority despite growth concerns. Rate cuts may come in August and November if cooling measures work, according to Goldman Sachs and Lombard Odier. Now, shares of WK Kellogg surged over 56% after reports that chocolate giant Ferrero is in talks to buy the breakfast cereal maker in a $3 billion deal. The move would give Ferrero, known for Kinder and Rocher, a major foothold in the U.S. cereal market with brands like Fruit Loops and Rice Krispies. The deal could be announced this week, according to reports from WSJ and FTSE Week. Kellogg, a spin-off from Kellanova in 2023, and has been struggling with debt and shifting consumer trends. Now, Linda Yaccarino has resigned as CEO of X, the social platform owned by Elon Musk, after 2 years in the role. Her exit comes amid controversy over X's AI tool, Grok, and ongoing advertiser concerns. Yaccarino thanked Musk in a post, saying she was grateful for the chance to transform X into the Everything app. Hired in 2023 to rebuild ties with advertisers, she was seen as by many as CEO in name only, with Musk retaining day-to-day control. Analysts say a departure was inevitable as Musk continued to dominate X strategy and public image. Now, if you live in the UK and you want to travel, prices for all-inclusive family holidays from the UK have surged, with Cyprus up 23% and UAE trips rising 26%, according to travel supermarket data. Spain, Greece, Turkey, UAE, and Portugal, the most searched destinations, all saw prices increases. In contrast, Italy and Tunisia, small declines. Agents say travelers are now opting for shorter stays or midweek travel to save costs. And those are the highlights that we have. But before we end that, Britain has just pulled the plug on its plan for regional zonal electricity pricing, which I mentioned earlier. We're just seeing that affecting household costs, but maybe we'll have that discussion with Juliana when she's feeling much better, because today was supposed to be that discussion, but we couldn't have that. We know that electricity is one of the major factors that countries, businesses have to consider, the cost that, the input a business have to put into consider before they give out the overall pricing. And households these days, with inflation, that's already biting. And we're already seeing that here in Nigeria, where people, even with the money, they can't even get electricity because, they can't even get the meters that they need in the country.
Yeah. Well, that was a conversation we had yesterday, even though in Nigeria, the meter manufacturer that I had on the program yesterday says, well, they have manufactured meters. There are meters there, but I guess somewhere in the bureaucracy and the paperwork and documentation, all of that is deterring the distribution. Even though the federal government has some applaudable policies are supposed to help the distribution of meters, are out there, but it seems there are some things, that actually exactly.
Okay.
But anyway, this is the UK, and remember there was a time that they also had to put a cap on energy pricing and all of that.
But right now they say it's just going to be, they want to do that regional zonal pricing, that each region will have their own prices. But right now they say, I think we just have to stick with one uniform price, and then we'll see how that goes.
Well, at least they have a system there that considers the reality.
Okay.
At least they do have some of those. Will, thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of hours for that. And just before we head to tell you how the market closed yesterday, the customs, they do have a news for you. And I think we'll take that report before we tell you the closing numbers for yesterday.
This quarter.
This is the latest seizure by the Murtala Mohammed Area Command of the Nigeria Customs Service, which formed part of its half-year report for 2025.
75 big bags.
In its operations to stop smuggling, the NCS confiscated 75 jumbo bags of pangolin scales weighing 3,765 kilograms with a duty-paid value of 772.4 million naira, the largest haul recorded by the command since its establishment.
You know, this is a global thing. The number of pangolin that has gone before they can get this. We're talking of wildlife here. Thank God it's not an abandoned seizure. Those one involved, they are pulling off in the mine dome, they will be jailed.
Arms were also uncovered as part of illegal shipments, including 18 units of Tipman semi-automatic caliber mag-fed paintball markers, 32 pieces of empty Tipman tank cylinders, and 20 units of ballistic helmets, all with a duty-paid value of 792 million naira. Suspects arrested in connection with the seizure are being prosecuted.
Sit down, please.
Apart from the seizures, the MMAC controller spoke extensively about the command's performance in terms of revenue generation.
The command generated a total of 97 billion, 157 million, 711,817 naira 56 kobo against 80 billion, 351 million, 299,068 naira generated in the corresponding year, 2024, representing 20.92% growth.
The command says it's still fully committed to meeting its 2022 revenue target of 358 billion naira, while also working alongside sister security to stop illicit activities coming through the country's biggest entry and exit point.
And now the closing numbers from yesterday showing that the market is still on the bull run, 121,989.67. That's the closing number for yesterday. The all-share index added 0.28%. The market cap is at 76.9. I hope that when Will comes during Business Incorporated for intraday numbers, we would have crossed, it would be nice if we just crossed that 121,900 and then we're 122. That would be a new level and worth celebrating for the market in Nigeria. We look at the activity and we see it was all red. Volume, value, and deals down compared to the previous session, but top gainers, we have Chams, Omatech, Elolix. Elolix seems to be the share of interest at this time, but I wonder what's the news that's driving it. But we've seen it at the top trades for top gainers now for like 3 sessions. So you might want to take a look at that and maybe pursue the news behind it. That will help you make a decision if it's not too late. Top losers, Legend Int, Guinea Insurance, and Itana. Itana is back in the news, but this time it's in the red side. Top trades for yesterday, Japan Gold has been very active since last week. Access Core and ICO Insurance. So we see insurance coming back again. It's not being forgotten, even though it's the penny stocks. So it's still a bull market for Nigeria. There are analysis everywhere there you want to read through and see if there's going to be a pullback. There was a short pullback. It was really short. So if you miss that window, perhaps you want to wait for another one, or you just want to dive in before it gets too late. But it's a good market we're having in Nigeria at the stock exchange at this time. For the fixed income, we've seen the government reduce its appetite, heading to the market, as we discussed yesterday. So while the NTB is looking more attractive now, because obviously FPI, that's a foreign portfolio investors, seem to be the target of the federal government now. But I mean, the saving bonds is out, the calendar came out, and we always give you all the information here where you could put your money and just go to sleep and wait and allow your money work for you. So the fixed income market, not as attractive as before, but it's still looking good. And MPC is coming soon, so of course that will also feed into how the federal government will approach, or the CBN will approach, the fixed income market. But we know that the government will still head to the market to raise some money. So these are ways you can put your money and wait for it to work for you. And that's it on Business Morning today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. In a couple of hours, that's 1 p.m., I'll be back with Will Ebong. We'll give you intraday numbers as well as conversations that await you that could help you make the right decision for your money and your economy. I'm Ini John Mekwa. I'll talk to you later.